A powerful billionaire is about to marry the woman of his dreams, when suddenly a small child appears at their engagement party with a shocking claim. Is this child telling the truth? What secrets might be hiding behind the perfect facade of this seemingly innocent bride-to-be? Stay with me until the end to discover how love, betrayal, and redemption collide in this unexpected family drama that will leave you wondering about the choices we make when desperate, and if some mistakes can ever truly be forgiven. The grand Reynolds estate sparkled under the evening sky, chandeliers casting a golden glow across the manicured gardens where the elite of society gathered. Tonight was special, another celebration leading up to what everyone called the wedding of the decade. Arthur Reynolds, at 65, cut an impressive figure despite his age. His silver hair caught the light as he moved confidently among his guests, his hand never leaving the small of his young fiancée's back. Lila Hayes, with her delicate features and disarming smile, had captured not just Arthur's heart, but the curiosity of everyone in their social circle. How had this unknown young woman from supposedly humble beginnings managed to win over one of the country's most eligible widowers? "Arthur, darling, isn't this just magical?" Lila whispered, her eyes wide as she took in the extravagance around them. "I never imagined I would be part of something so beautiful." Arthur smiled down at her, the lines around his eyes crinkling with genuine affection. "Nothing is too beautiful for you, my dear. Just wait until the wedding next week. That will truly be something to behold." As they moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations and well wishes, Arthur couldn't help but reflect on how drastically his life had changed in the past year. After Martha's death, he had resigned himself to a life of solitude, focusing solely on his business empire. Then Lila had appeared like sunshine breaking through storm clouds. Her apparent lack of interest in his wealth had been refreshing, her stories of growing up in a simple rural community charming in their innocence. Mr. Reynolds, Marcus, his head of security, approached with a slight bow. "Everything is proceeding smoothly. We've had no issues with the press trying to sneak in." "Excellent work as always, Marcus," Arthur replied, noting the subtle scrutiny in Marcus's eyes as they passed over Lila. Marcus had been skeptical about the relationship from the beginning, though he kept his reservations professional. Arthur appreciated his caution, even if he felt it unnecessary in this case. Lila excused herself to greet some guests, floating across the room in her champagne-colored gown that made her look even younger than her 26 years. Arthur watched her with pride, though something in her manner tonight seemed different. A slight tension around her eyes, perhaps. He attributed it to wedding nerves. "She's quite captivating," came a voice beside him. Arthur turned to find his old friend Judge Harrison observing Lila as well. "That she is, James. I'm a lucky man." "Indeed." "And the prenuptial agreement? All settled?" Arthur frowned slightly. "We've discussed it." Lila wasn't particularly concerned with the details. The judge raised an eyebrow but said nothing more on the subject, instead shifting to discuss their upcoming golf game. As they talked, Arthur's attention drifted back to Lila, who now stood near the entrance to the ballroom. She was speaking, animatedly with the event coordinator, gesturing toward something outside. Suddenly her posture changed. Even from across the room, Arthur could see her stiffen, her hand freezing mid-gesture. The coordinator looked confused, following Lila's gaze toward the entrance. Arthur excused himself from the judge and began making his way toward his fiancée, instinctively sensing that something was wrong. Before he could reach her, the crowd near the entrance parted slightly, and Arthur saw what had caused Lila's reaction. A small figure had somehow made it past security. A little girl, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, in a simple dress that stood in stark contrast to the evening wear around her. She stood scanning the room with an intensity that seemed out of place on her young face. Then her eyes found Lila. "Lily?" The child's voice carried across the suddenly quieting room. "Lily, it's me." Arthur watched in confusion as Lila's face drained of color. The little girl was running now, weaving between startled guests toward Lila, who seemed frozen in place. "Lila?" Arthur called, picking up his pace. "Do you know this child?" But before Lila could answer, the little girl had reached her, throwing her arms around Lila's waist with such force that Lila stumbled backward. Lily, you left me. You promised you'd come back for me. Arthur arrived at Lila's side to find her trying to disengage from the child's grip, her expression a mixture of shock and what looked disturbingly like fear. I'm sorry, Lila stammered, looking around at the staring guests. There must be some mistake. My name is Lila Hayes, not Lily. I don't know this child. The little girl looked up, her face crumpling in confusion. But you're my sister. You're Lily Morgan. Why are you pretending? Did you forget about me, about Mia? A murmur rippled through the gathering crowd. Arthur placed a protective arm around Lila's shoulders. There's clearly some confusion here. Marcus, he called to his security chief, who was already approaching. Perhaps you could help sort this out. Marcus nodded, kneeling to the child's level. Hello there. My name is Marcus. Can you tell me how you got here? The girl, Mia, she had called herself, kept her eyes fixed on Lila. I saw her picture in a magazine. It said she was getting married to a rich man. I knew it was Lily, even though her hair is different now. I've been looking for her since she left me at Green Meadows Children's Home 3 years ago. Arthur felt Lila trembling under his arm. This is preposterous, she whispered, but something in her voice had changed. I've never seen this child before in my life. Mia's eyes filled with tears. You promised, Lily. After Mum and Dad died, you said we'd always stay together. You said you'd come back for me. Security personnel were approaching now, along with a flustered-looking woman who appeared to be a caretaker of some sort. I'm so sorry, the woman said breathlessly. She slipped away from me. Come along, Mia, we need to go. No, Mia cried, clinging tighter to Lila. Tell them, Lily. Tell them who you are. Arthur looked down at his fiancée, expecting to see continued confusion or perhaps compassion for the obviously disturbed child. Instead, what he saw sent a chill through him, a flash of something that looked like recognition, quickly masked by indignation. This is ridiculous, Lila said, her voice stronger now. Someone obviously put this poor child up to this. Who would do such a thing? Arthur, I think someone is trying to sabotage our wedding. As Marcus gently but firmly separated Mia from Lila, Arthur found himself studying his fiancée's face with new eyes. There was something in her reaction that didn't sit right with him, a brittleness that he'd never seen before. Perhaps we should hear the child out, he suggested quietly. Lila's eyes widened. Arthur, surely you don't believe this fantasy. I grew up in Cedar Creek with my aunt and uncle after my parents died. I was an only child. You know this. Mia, now being held back by the caretaker, called out again. Your name is Lily Morgan. Our parents were Thomas and Rebecca Morgan. They died in a car crash when I was 5. You have a birthmark shaped like a crescent moon on your left shoulder. You used to sing me to sleep with, You Are My Sunshine. Arthur felt Lila flinch beside him. The birthmark. He knew about that. Intimate detail. And something about the way the child spoke with such certainty and specific details. I think, he said carefully, that we should continue this conversation somewhere more private. He turned to Marcus. Please show our guests to the dining area for dinner. Explain that we've had a minor situation that requires our attention. Marcus nodded, immediately taking charge of directing the murmuring crowd. Arthur turned to the caretaker. And you are? Sarah Williams, sir. I'm a social worker with Child Protective Services. This is Mia Morgan, one of my cases. I am so sorry about this disruption. Please bring Mia to my study, Arthur said, making a decision. I think we need to understand what's happening here. Arthur, Lila protested, her voice rising slightly. You can't be serious. This is clearly some kind of scam. Arthur looked at her thoughtfully. If that's the case, we'll determine it quickly enough. But something this serious deserves proper attention, don't you think? Without waiting for her response, he guided her toward his study, aware that for the first time since they'd met, there was resistance in her body as she moved beside him. In the study, Mia sat in one of the large leather chairs, her feet barely reaching the edge of the seat. Sarah stood protectively beside her, while Lila perched tensely on the sofa, as far from the child as possible. Arthur remained standing, trying to make sense of the situation. Mia, he said gently, can you tell me more about your sister Lily? Lila interjected immediately. Arthur, this is absurd. We should be calling the police, not entertaining this charade. Please, Lila, Arthur said firmly. Let's hear what she has to say. Mia looked directly at Arthur, her young face surprisingly composed. Lily is 4 years older than me. After our parents died, we went to live with our grandmother, but she got sick and couldn't take care of us anymore. Then we went to the children's home. Her voice wavered. Lily promised we'd stay together, but one day she said she had to go, away to find work so she could make enough money to get us out. She said she'd come back for me. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she never did. Are you all enjoying this story so far? If you are, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more emotional family dramas like this one. Now let's continue with our story and discover what happens next. And you believe this woman is your sister? Arthur asked, gesturing toward Lila. Mia nodded emphatically. I know it's her. She looks different. Her hair is blonde now instead of brown, and she talks fancier. But it's Lily. Arthur turned to Lila, whose face had become a rigid mask. Lila, is there any possibility this child could be confused? Perhaps you resemble her sister. This is outrageous, Lila whispered, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I told you I grew up in Cedar Creek. I was an only child. My parents died when I was 12, and I went to live with my aunt and uncle. I've never been in a children's home, and I've certainly never abandoned a sister. Sarah, the social worker, spoke up. Mr. Reynolds, I apologize for this disruption. Mia has been through a lot, and while I don't doubt she believes what she's saying, children can sometimes create connections that aren't there, especially when they've experienced trauma. Arthur nodded thoughtfully. I understand. But Ms. Williams, would there be records of this Lily Morgan and her sister? Of course, Sarah replied. We have files at the agency, photos too, I imagine. Arthur saw Lila's knuckles whiten as she gripped her hands together even tighter. Then perhaps that would be the simplest way to resolve this, he suggested. If you could bring those records, we could put this matter to rest once and for all. No, Lila stood suddenly. This is ridiculous. I will not have our wedding week turned upside down by some confused child and her wild claims. Arthur, please, can't you see what's happening here? Someone must have put her up to this. Arthur regarded his fiancée carefully. In all the months they'd been together, he'd never seen her like this. Frantic, defensive, it disturbed him more than the child's claims. Lila, he said quietly, if there's nothing to these allegations, then the records will prove that. Wouldn't you prefer to clear this up definitively? Before she could respond, Marcus knocked and entered. Sir, the guests are asking questions. What would you like me to tell them? Arthur sighed. Tell them Miss Hayes is feeling unwell and we've had to cut the evening short. Make my apologies and see everyone out, please. As Marcus left to execute this directive, Arthur turned back to Sarah. Ms. Williams, how quickly could you access those records? I could have them by tomorrow morning, she replied. Good. Then let's reconvene here at 10. He looked at Mia, who was watching Lila with a mixture of hurt and confusion. In the meantime, I assume Mia will be in your care? Sarah nodded. Yes, of course. No, Mia protested. I want to stay with Lily. I finally found her. That's not possible, Lila snapped, then immediately softened her tone. I mean, it wouldn't be appropriate. I'm not your sister, dear. Arthur caught something in her voice, a slight tremor that hadn't been there before. He made a decision. Ms. Williams, would it be possible for you and Mia to stay in one of our guest houses tonight? It would save you the trip back in the morning, and perhaps give Mia some comfort. Sarah looked surprised but nodded. If that's what you prefer, Mr. Reynolds, it is. Arthur turned to Marcus, who had returned. Marcus, please show Ms. Williams and Mia to the lake house and ensure they have everything they need. As they left, Lila turned to Arthur, her eyes wide. You can't be serious. You're actually entertaining this farce? Arthur took her hands in his, feeling them cold and trembling. Lila, if what you say is true, then by tomorrow this will all be cleared up. But if there's anything at all that you haven't told me about your past, now would be the time. Lila pulled her hands away. I can't believe you're questioning me based on the word of a child. Arthur, I thought you trusted me. I do trust you, he replied softly, but I also trust my instincts, and right now they're telling me something isn't right. He paused, watching her carefully. The birthmark she mentioned, That was quite specific. Lila's hand moved unconsciously toward her left shoulder. A lucky guess, she murmured. Or someone told her about me. And the song. You are my sunshine. A common lullaby, Lila countered, but her voice lacked conviction. Arthur sighed. Get some rest, Lila, we'll sort this out in the morning. As she left the study, Arthur poured himself a drink and moved to the window, gazing out at the distant lights of the lake house where the strange child who had disrupted their perfect world was now staying. For the first time since proposing, to Lila he felt a seed of doubt taking root. Who was this woman he was about to marry, and what secrets might she be hiding? That night, sleep eluded Arthur. He found himself in his study at 3 a.m, his laptop open before him. On impulse, he typed Green Meadows Children's Home into the search bar. It existed, a facility about 200 miles away. Next, he searched for Morgan car. Crash, with the approximate date Mia had suggested. Several results appeared and Arthur clicked on a local newspaper article. Local couple killed in highway accident. 2 daughters orphaned. The headline sent a chill through him. He scanned the article quickly, absorbing the details. Thomas and Rebecca Morgan had indeed died in a car crash 3 years ago, leaving behind 2 daughters, Lily, 15, and Mia, 5. There was even a grainy photo of the family from some community event. Arthur leaned closer to the screen, studying the teenage girl in the image. The quality was poor, but there was something familiar in the shape of her face, the set of her eyes. Could it possibly be Lila? His phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Sir, you asked me to monitor movements on the property. Miss Hayes just left the main house and is heading toward the lake house. Arthur stood abruptly. Why would Lila be going to see the child in the middle of the night? He grabbed his jacket and headed out, taking the path that wound through the gardens toward the lake house. As he approached, he saw lights on inside and slowed his pace, moving quietly onto the porch. Through the window, he could see into the living room where Lila stood facing Sarah and Mia. You need to leave, he heard Lila saying, her voice low and urgent. Both of you. There's money in this envelope. Enough to set Mia up somewhere nice, give her opportunities. But you need to go now, tonight, and never come back. Sarah looked outraged. Are you trying to bribe us? To abandon an investigation into child abandonment? There's nothing to investigate, Lila hissed. I'm not who she thinks I am. Mia stepped forward, her small face determined. You have the necklace, don't you? The one with Mom's ring on it. Show them that. Arthur saw Lila's hand move instinctively to her throat, where he knew she wore a simple chain with what she had told him was her mother's wedding ring. She had never taken it off in his presence. This proves nothing, Lila insisted, but her voice had lost its edge. Lily, Mia said softly. Why did you leave me? You promised. And then, to Arthur's shock, Lila's posture changed. Her shoulders slumped, and when she spoke again, her voice was different, less polished, with a hint of an accent she had never heard from her before. I had to, Mia. There was no future for us there. No opportunities. Arthur couldn't stop himself. He pushed, opened the door, causing all 3 to turn in surprise. So it's true, he said quietly. I hope you're all finding this story as fascinating as I find it to tell. If you're enjoying it, please hit that subscribe button and leave a comment below. Let's continue with this powerful family drama and see what happens when the truth starts to unravel. Lila, or Lily, stared at him, her face a mask of panic. Arthur, I can explain. I think you better had, he replied, entering the room fully and closing the door behind him. Starting with your real name. She seemed to deflate before his eyes, sinking onto the sofa. My name is Lily Morgan, she admitted finally, her voice barely audible. Everything Mia said is true. Mia rushed to her side, touching her arm tentatively. I knew it was you. I knew you wouldn't forget me. Lily, Arthur could no longer think of her as Lila, looked at her sister with tears streaming down her face. I never forgot you, Mia, not for one day. Arthur remained standing, trying to process this revelation. So our entire relationship has been based on lies. Lily looked up at him, desperation in her eyes. Not all of it. My feelings for you are real, Arthur. They've always been real. But everything else, your background, your family, even your name, I had to reinvent myself, she said pleadingly. You don't understand what it was like. After our parents died, there was nothing, no money, no prospects. When our grandmother died too, we ended up in that awful place. Sarah, who had been watching the exchange with professional detachment, spoke up. Green Meadows is actually one of the better facilities in the state. It was still an institution, Lily snapped, and they were going to separate us eventually. I could see it coming. Younger kids get adopted more easily. I was already 15, practically aged out of the system. But Mia, she looked at her sister, Mia still had a chance. So you abandoned her? Arthur asked incredulously. I didn't abandon her, Lily protested. I left to make a better life for both of us. I was going to come back for her once I had enough money, a place to live. But you didn't, Mia said softly. You never came back. Lily reached for her sister's hand. I know, and I'm so sorry. But it was harder than I thought. I got a job waiting tables, but the pay was terrible. I could barely support myself, let alone a child. Then I met this woman, Elaine, who owned a boutique. She took me under her wing, helped me change my appearance, taught me how to speak properly, how to fit into a different world. And that's when Lily Morgan became Lila Hayes, Arthur concluded. She nodded miserably. Elaine introduced me to people in her social circle. I started getting invited to events. And then I met you. Was that the plan all along? Arthur's voice was hard. Find a wealthy man, seduce him. No. Lily looked genuinely shocked. When I met you, I had no idea who you were. Remember? It was at that charity auction. I was there helping Elaine with her display. Arthur did remember. He had been struck by her apparent lack of recognition when they were introduced. Unusual in his experience, where most people immediately knew his net worth, if not his face. But once you found out, you saw an opportunity, he suggested. Lily looked down. I won't deny that your wealth was attractive, but Arthur, I fell in love with you. Your kindness, your intelligence, the way you treated me like I mattered. While living a complete lie, he pointed out. I couldn't tell you the truth, she whispered. Who would want to marry someone from my background, someone who had lived in a children's home, who had no education, no family connections? I would have, Arthur said quietly, if you had been honest from the start. Lily looked up, hope flickering briefly in her eyes. And now? Before Arthur could answer, Mia spoke up. What about me? Would you have come back for me if you married Arthur? Lily turned to her sister, anguish plain on her face. Mia, I don't know. I wanted to, but the longer I was away, the harder it became to figure out how to explain where you had come from. And then I worried about what you would say, whether you would expose me. So you were just going to leave me there forever. Mia's voice broke. Arthur watched as the full weight of her actions seemed to hit Lily. She reached for her sister, who pulled away. Mia, please, I was scared. I made terrible choices. But I never stopped loving you. Sarah cleared her throat. I think we've established that you are indeed Lily Morgan, and that you left your minor sister in state care under false pretenses. That's a serious matter. Are you going to press charges? Lily asked, fear evident in her voice. Sarah looked thoughtful. That would depend on several factors, including what happens next. All eyes turned to Arthur, who found himself in the impossible position of judge and jury. I think, he said carefully, that we all need time to process this. It's late and emotions are running high. He turned to Lily. I suggest you return to the house. We'll talk more in the morning. Lily stood, wiping tears from her face. Arthur, please, I know I've made terrible mistakes, but I do love you. Right now, he replied, I don't even know who you are. He turned to Sarah. Miss Williams, I'd appreciate it if you and Mia would stay here tonight as planned. As Lily reluctantly left, Arthur found himself at a loss. The woman he thought he knew, the woman he had planned to marry in just a few days, was a stranger to him now. And yet something in her story touched him. The desperate choices of a young girl trying to escape a hopeless situation, trying to reinvent herself. Wasn't that something he could understand, even empathize with? But the abandonment of her sister, that was harder to reconcile. The next morning dawned clear and cold. Arthur, after a sleepless night, found himself walking the grounds trying to clear his head. The wedding was just 6 days away. Invitations had been sent, arrangements made. His reputation, his heart, his future, all hung in the balance. Found himself at the lake house again. To his surprise, Mia was outside, sitting on the dock with her feet dangling over the water. He approached cautiously, not wanting to startle her. "May I join you?" he asked. Mia looked up, nodding shyly. Arthur sat beside her, noticing the careful distance she maintained. "How are you feeling this morning?" he asked. Mia shrugged. "Confused. Happy I found Lily. Sad that she didn't want me. I think it's more complicated than that," Arthur said gently. Lila, made some bad choices, but I don't think it was because she didn't want you." Mia looked at him skeptically. "Then why? Did she leave me?" Arthur sighed. "Sometimes adults make mistakes trying to protect the people they love. They think they're doing the right thing, but they're not." "Are you going to marry her still?" Mia asked bluntly. "If you're enjoying this emotional tale of family secrets and hard choices, be sure to hit subscribe and like this video. Now let's continue our story and see if love can overcome betrayal." The question caught Arthur off guard. "I don't know," he answered honestly. "Finding out someone you love has been lying to you. It makes you question everything." Mia nodded, solemnly. "She lied to me too. She said she'd come back." They sat in companionable silence for a moment, united in their sense of betrayal by the same person. "What do you want to happen, Mia?" Arthur asked finally. The little girl considered this carefully. "I want to live with Lily again. I want us to be a family." She glanced sideways at him. "But I guess if you marry her, you'd be part of our family, too." Despite everything, Arthur found himself smiling at her directness. "That would be the traditional arrangement, yes. Would you be my brother-in-law then, or like a dad?" Arthur felt something shift in his chest, a protective instinct he hadn't expected to feel. "I'm not sure. We'd have to figure that out together, I suppose." Further conversation was interrupted by Sarah calling Mia in for breakfast. As the child ran back to the lake house, Arthur remained on the dock thinking about family and second chances. When he returned to the main house, he found Lily sitting alone in the breakfast room, her food untouched before her. She looked up. As he entered, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. "Arthur," she began immediately, "I know what I did was wrong, all of it. The lies, leaving Mia, everything. But please believe me when I say I love you. That was never a lie." Arthur sat across from her. "Tell me everything," he said simply. "Not the story you created for Lila Hayes, but the truth about Lily Morgan. All of it." And so she did. She told him about growing up in a small town with parents who worked multiple jobs to make ends meet, about the accident that took them both in one terrible night, about the grandmother who tried but couldn't manage 2 grieving children along with her own failing health, about the children's home where she and Mia were placed after their grandmother died. "It wasn't awful," she admitted. "The staff tried their best, but I could see what was happening. Couples would come looking to adopt, and they always wanted the younger children. Mia was adorable, sweet-natured. I knew someone would want her, but not with a teenage sister attached," Arthur guessed. Lily nodded. "Exactly. I was a complication, a barrier to her chance at a real family, and I was almost 18, aging. Out of the system with no education, no money, no prospects." Her voice hardened. "I knew what happened to girls like me. Dead-end jobs, abusive relationships, sometimes worse. So you left." "I told myself it was for the best," she whispered. "That Mia would get adopted by a nice family who could give her everything I couldn't. That I'd make something of myself and then come back for her if she hadn't found a better life. But you didn't come back." Lily looked down at her hands. "At first, it was just survival. I was sleeping on a co-worker's couch, working double shifts, just to save enough for a security deposit on an apartment. Then I met Elaine, and suddenly there was this possibility. She saw something in me. Potential, she called it. She started training me, molding me. New clothes, new speech patterns, new name, new identity," Arthur added. "Yes, and the further I went down that road, the harder it became to reconcile with my past. How could I explain Mia? Who would believe that this polished young woman had abandoned her sister in a children's home? She looked up at him, tears in her eyes. The truth is, I was a coward. I convinced myself Mia was better off without me, that she'd probably been adopted by a wonderful family who could give her everything. But she wasn't, Arthur pointed out. No, Lily admitted. Sarah told me last night. There was interest at first, but Mia kept asking about me, insisting her real sister was coming back for her. Eventually, the potential adoptive parents moved on to children with fewer complications. Arthur felt a pang of sympathy for both sisters, one abandoned, the other carrying the guilt of that abandonment while trying to escape her circumstances. And us? He asked finally. Was any of that real? Lily reached across the table for his hand. All of it was real, Arthur. When I met you, I had no intention of getting involved with anyone seriously. I was still building my new life. But you were unexpected. Kind in a way I wasn't used to. Genuine. The more time we spent together, the more I fell in love with the man you are. That's why I've been so terrified of you discovering the truth. Arthur studied her face, searching for any sign of manipulation or deceit. What he saw instead was raw vulnerability. Lily Morgan exposed at last, with all her flaws and fears laid bare. I don't know if I can trust you again, he said honestly. I understand, she replied, withdrawing her hand. Will you tell everyone the truth about me? Arthur considered this. The scandal would be enormous. Billionaire nearly duped by imposter with a false identity. The press would have a field day, but the damage would extend beyond just them. What do you plan to do about Mia? Lily looked surprised by the question. I don't know. I can't just leave her again, not now that she's found me. But I have nothing to offer her. No home of my own, no job. She laughed bitterly. Not even my real identity anymore. Arthur made a decision then, not a final one about their relationship, but about the immediate situation. For now, Mia stays here. We'll work with Ms. Williams to make the arrangements. You'll have a chance to reconnect with your sister and figure out what comes next. And the wedding? Lily asked tentatively. We'll postpone, Arthur replied. I'm not saying it's off permanently, but I need time. We both do. Tears spilled down Lily's cheeks. I never meant to hurt you, Arthur, or Mia. I just wanted to escape. I know, he said softly. But now you have to face what you've done and find a way forward that doesn't involve running away or hiding behind a false identity. Over the following days, a strange new dynamic evolved in the Reynolds estate. The wedding was officially postponed due to a family emergency, technically not a lie. Mia moved into one of the guest rooms in the main house while Lily remained in what had been her and Arthur's shared wing, though they now slept separately. Arthur watched as the sisters began the delicate process of reconnection. It was painful at times. Mia's hurt and sense of abandonment didn't simply disappear with Lily's apologies. There were arguments, tears, periods of stony silence, but there were also moments of genuine affection, of shared memories and rediscovered bonds. I want to thank everyone who stayed with me for this emotional journey so far. Don't forget to subscribe if you're enjoying the story. We're about to discover how these complicated relationships will resolve. Marcus, ever vigilant, approached Arthur as he observed the sisters from a distance one afternoon. Sir, have you considered the possibility that this is still some kind of elaborate con? The child could be coached, Arthur shook his head. Sarah verified everything. The records confirm their identities, and there are photos from the children's home of both girls together. Mia is exactly who she claims to be, and so, unfortunately, is Lily. Then the question becomes what you intend to do about it, Marcus. Noted. The guests will need to be notified soon if the wedding is truly cancelled. Arthur sighed. I know, I need more time. When I look at them together, I see glimpses of the woman I fell in love with. Not the polished Lila Hayes, but someone more authentic, more vulnerable. Marcus nodded, though concern remained evident in his expression. Just be careful, sir. People don't change their fundamental nature overnight. As days passed, Arthur found himself spending more time with both sisters. He discovered that Mia was bright and resilient, despite all she had endured. She had Lily's quick mind and observant nature, but possessed a straightforward honesty that her older sister had sacrificed along the way. One evening, Arthur found Lily sitting alone on the terrace, watching as the sun set over the gardens. He took the seat beside her, noticing how she had gradually abandoned some of the affectations of Lila Hayes. Her speech patterns had relaxed. Her carefully maintained posture sometimes gave way to a more natural slump when she was tired. "Mia asked me something interesting today," Arthur began conversationally. Lily turned to him, curious. "What was that?" "She wanted to know if I was going to be her brother-in-law or something more like a father figure." Lily's eyes widened. "Arthur," he held up a hand, "I'm not pressuring you for an answer about us, but it made me realize that whatever happens between you and me, Mia needs stability. She's been bounced around enough." "I know," Lily replied softly. "I've been thinking about that constantly, about all the ways I've failed her." "The question is," Arthur said, "what are you going to do about it now?" Lily took a deep breath. "I want to be her sister again, her real sister, not some glossy fake version. I want to earn back her trust." "And how do you plan to do that?" "By being honest," she said simply, "starting with legally reclaiming my identity as Lily Morgan." Arthur studied her face, searching for any hint of calculation or performance. What he saw instead surprised him: determination tinged with fear, but no deception. That would mean giving up Lila Hayes completely, he noted. "The connections, the social standing, everything you've built." "I know," she nodded, "but Lila was never real, and I'm tired of living someone else's life." She paused, looking directly at him. "Even if that means losing you." The honesty in her statement touched something in Arthur. "You know," he said slowly, "I fell in love with a woman who I thought was uninterested in my wealth, who seemed authentic in a world of pretense." He smiled sadly. "Ironically, while your identity was false, those qualities that attracted me might have been the most genuine parts of you, shining through the facade." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "I never had to pretend to love you, Arthur. That was always real." Before Arthur could respond, they heard Mia calling for her sister. The moment passed, but something had shifted between them, a tentative bridge, forming over the chasm of broken trust. The next morning, Arthur was surprised to find Sarah Williams at his door again. "Ms. Williams, is everything all right?" "Yes," she said, though her expression was serious. "I wanted to discuss Mia's situation with you and with Lily, if she's available." Arthur led her to his study, where Lily joined them, looking apprehensive. "Is something wrong?" she asked immediately. Sarah took a seat, arranging the folder she carried on her lap. "I've been consulting with my supervisors about this unusual situation. Legally speaking, Lily, you abandoned your sister and assumed a false identity. Under normal circumstances, there would be consequences for that." Lily paled, but nodded. "I understand. However," Sarah continued, "this is not a normal circumstance. You were barely an adult yourself when you left, with no support system and limited options. And now," she glanced at Arthur, "your situation has changed dramatically." "What are you suggesting?" Arthur asked. "Mia has been in foster care for 3 years now. She's had multiple placements, none permanent. The state's primary interest is in her welfare." Sarah turned to Lily. "If you were to petition for custody of your sister, with proof of stable housing and income, it would be considered seriously, especially given your biological relationship." Hope bloomed on Lily's face. "You mean I could take care of her legally? Have her live with me?" "Potentially," Sarah nodded, "though there would be a process, home studies, background checks, probationary period, and you would need to legally re-establish your identity as Lily Morgan." "I want to do that anyway," Lily said firmly, "but—" She glanced uncertainly at Arthur. "I don't actually have my own home or income at the moment." The implication hung in the air. Arthur realized he was facing a crossroads. His relationship with Lily was still fragile, the breach of trust profound. And yet, he couldn't deny the genuine change he had witnessed in her over these difficult days. The shedding of pretense, the painful honesty, the willingness to face consequences for her actions. And then there was Mia, bright, resilient Mia, who had already lost so much. The thought of her being shuffled back into the system, away from the sister she had just found, was troubling. "Miss Williams," Arthur said carefully, "what if I were to provide housing and financial support for both Lily and Mia while this situation resolves itself? Not as Lily's fiancé necessarily, but as a concerned third party." Sarah looked thoughtful. "That would certainly help establish stability for Mia, though there would still be questions about the long-term arrangement." "One step at a time," Arthur suggested. "Let's focus on what's best for Mia right now." After Sarah left, Lily turned to Arthur, her eyes searching his face. "Why would you do that, after everything I've done?" Arthur considered his answer carefully. "Because despite the lies, I've seen enough of the real you now to believe you deserve a second chance. And because Mia deserves to be with her sister, if that's what she wants." "And us?" Lily asked softly. "I don't know yet," Arthur admitted. "Trust once broken isn't easily repaired. But I'm willing to see where this goes, slowly this time, with honesty between us. Are you all still with me in this emotional journey? If you're enjoying this story of redemption and forgiveness, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Now, let's continue and see if this family can heal their broken bonds." In the weeks that followed, the transformation of Lila Hayes back into Lily Morgan began in earnest. There were legal documents to file, explanations to make, systems to navigate. Arthur provided not just financial support, but also access to lawyers who could help expedite the process while minimizing public attention. The official story given to their social circle was that the wedding had been postponed due to Lila unexpectedly reuniting with a long-lost sister who needed her care. It wasn't the full truth, but it contained enough of it to satisfy most questions while protecting Mia from unwanted scrutiny. For Lily, the process was both liberating and terrifying. Each document signed, each legal acknowledgement of her true identity, stripped away another layer of the persona she had so carefully constructed. Sometimes Arthur would catch her staring at her reflection, as if trying to reconcile the woman she had become with the girl she had been. "Do you regret it?" he asked her one evening as they sat reviewing paperwork. "Giving up Lila?" Lily considered the question seriously. "Parts of it," she admitted. "The security, the ease of moving through the world when people respect you automatically. The doors that opened simply because of how I presented myself." She looked down at her hands. "But living a lie is exhausting, Arthur. There was never a moment when I could fully relax, never a conversation where I didn't have to filter every word through the Lila lens, wondering if something might give me away." "And now?" A small smile touched her lips. "Now I'm terrified most of the time. I have no idea if I can be a good guardian to Mia, if I can build a real life as myself, if I even remember who that person is." Her eyes met his. "But at least I can breathe." Meanwhile, Arthur observed the evolving relationship between the sisters with interest. After the initial emotional reunion, they had settled into a cautious rebuilding of their bond. Mia, though, young, carried the wariness of a child who had learned not to trust too easily. She tested boundaries, asked difficult questions, sometimes lashed out when feelings became too overwhelming. Lily, to her credit, met each challenge with a patience Arthur hadn't seen in her before. She never deflected Mia's hard questions, even when the answers reflected poorly on her. She allowed her sister's anger without becoming defensive. And slowly, through this painful honesty, trust began to regrow between them. One afternoon, Arthur found them sitting together on the floor of Mia's room, looking through an old shoebox. "What's all this?" he asked, curious. Mia looked up, her face animated. "Lily had them all along. Photos of Mom and Dad and our old house and even my baby pictures." Lily smiled, though her eyes were damp. "I couldn't take much when I left, but I couldn't bear to leave these behind. They were all I had left of our parents." Arthur sat down beside them, looking at the faded photographs of a family that had once been whole. A handsome young couple smiled back at the camera, a teenage Lily and toddler Mia between them. "Your father has your eyes," he observed to Mia. "And Mom had Lily's smile," Mia replied, tracing the image with her finger. "Sometimes I forget what they looked like. That's why we have these, Lily said softly, so we never completely forget. She looked at Arthur, a silent acknowledgement passing between them of all that had been lost and what might still be salvaged. As summer turned to fall, their unusual arrangement settled into a new normal. The lake house became Lily and Mia's home, close enough to maintain connections, but separate enough to establish their own household. Lily began taking online courses toward a degree, determined to build legitimate skills and qualifications. Mia enrolled in the local school, gradually making friends and adjusting to stability. Arthur kept his distance romantically, though he remained involved in their lives. The broken engagement had generated some gossip initially, but his vague explanations of family complications eventually dampened interest. In truth, he was using this time to observe Lily without the pressure of their relationship, to see who she really was when she wasn't trying to be what someone else wanted. What he saw impressed him more than Lila Hayes ever had. Lily Morgan worked harder, loved more fiercely, and faced her failures with a courage that the polished socialite had never shown. She was rougher around the edges, less graceful in certain social situations, but infinitely more authentic. 1. Rainy October evening, Arthur stopped by the lake house with some paperwork from the lawyers. He found Lily at the kitchen table, surrounded by textbooks, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail as she concentrated on her studies. "How's it going?" he asked, setting down the documents. She looked up with a tired smile. "Statistics is kicking my butt, but I'm not giving up. How was your trip to Chicago?" "Productive," he replied, taking a seat across from her. "The merger's going through." A comfortable silence fell between them, so different from their early courtship when every moment had been filled with carefully curated conversation. This new ease, born of seeing each other at their worst and choosing to remain connected, felt more valuable than the passionate beginnings they had shared. "Mia asleep?" he asked finally. Lily nodded. She had a big day, first soccer game with her new team. "Did they win?" "Crushed the opposition," Lily grinned. "She scored twice. You should have seen her, Arthur. So confident, so happy." The pride in her voice touched him. This was what redemption looked like. Not grand gestures or dramatic confessions, but the steady everyday work of being present, of making amends through consistent care. "The guardianship hearing is next week," Arthur reminded her gently. "Are you nervous?" "Terrified," Lily admitted. "But Sarah thinks it will go well. The home study went fine. My identity restoration is complete, and I've maintained stable housing and income." She gave him a pointed look. "Though we both know the income part is your doing." "A job at my foundation is hardly charity," Arthur countered. "You're good with people, organized, and you understand what it means to need help. Those are valuable qualities." "Still," she said softly, "I couldn't have done any of this without you, Arthur. Why did you help us, really, after what I did to you? I hope you're all still with me for this emotional journey. Don't forget to subscribe if you want more stories like this one. Now, let's continue with our tale as we approach a pivotal moment." Arthur considered the question, wanting to be as honest with her as she had finally been with him. "Initially, it was for Mia. She deserved better than being shuttled back into the system." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "But as time went on, I realized I was also doing it for myself." "What do you mean?" Lily looked puzzled. "I spent my life building things, Lily. Companies, buildings, fortunes. But I've destroyed things too. Relationships that didn't work out, partnerships that went sour. When this all happened, my first instinct was to walk away, to demolish what we had and start over." His eyes met hers. "But then I thought, what if just once I tried to rebuild instead? What if something broken could become something different but equally valuable?" Lily's eyes filled with tears. "And what have you concluded? About us?" Arthur reached across the table and took her hand. "I've concluded that I prefer Lily Morgan with all her flaws and complicated history to the perfect illusion of Lila Hayes. I've concluded that watching you fight to become a better sister, a better person, has made me fall in love with you all over again. This time with someone real." "Arthur," she whispered, her voice catching. I don't want to rush back into anything, he cautioned. We both need time, and Mia needs stability more than she needs another major change in her life right now. But I'd like to start again, properly, this time. No lies, no pretense, just us, whatever that means. Before Lily could respond, a small voice came from the doorway. Does this mean you're getting married again? They turned to find Mia in her pajamas, watching them with curious eyes. Lily laughed softly, wiping away tears. We're just talking, sweetie. Arthur and I are figuring things out. Mia came to stand between them, looking from one to the other with surprising wisdom for her age. You should figure it out faster. You both look happier when you're together. Arthur couldn't help smiling. Is that your expert opinion? Mia nodded solemnly. And if you got married, we could all live in the big house and I could have that room with the window seat that looks over the garden. Oh, you've got it all planned out, do you? Lily teased, pulling her sister onto her lap. I'm just saying. Mia yawned, leaning against Lily. Families should be together. The word hung in the air between them. Family. Not the one they had expected or planned for, but perhaps the one they all needed. The guardianship hearing was a formality in the woo end. With Arthur's influence, Lily's demonstrated commitment, and Sarah's positive recommendations, the judge granted Lily full legal guardianship of Mia. As they left the courthouse, Mia skipping ahead, while Sarah spoke with the lawyers, Arthur and Lily found themselves standing together on the steps. So what happens now? Arthur asked. You have what you wanted, your sister, your real identity, a fresh start. Lily looked up at him, the autumn sunlight catching in her hair. Her natural brown now, the blonde pretense grown out and cut away. Not everything I want, she said quietly. Arthur took her hand, bringing it to his lips in a gesture that felt both old-fashioned and perfectly right. We'll get there, he promised, one honest step at a time. 6 months later, on a perfect spring day, the Reynolds estate once again prepared for a celebration. This time, however, the guest list was smaller, the preparations more intimate. In the garden, where they had first experienced the disruption that changed everything, chairs were arranged in neat rows, and flowers bloomed in carefully tended beds. In the main house, Arthur adjusted his tie, feeling a sense of certainty that had been absent the first time around. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his usual stoic expression softened slightly for the occasion. Everything's ready, sir, he reported. The guests are seated and the judge has arrived, Arthur nodded. And Lily? Mia? A rare smile touched Marcus's lips. They're ready too. And if I may say so, sir, I was wrong about her. The changes are genuine. High praise coming from you, Marcus, Arthur noted, clapping his security chief on the shoulder as they left the room together. In the garden, Arthur took his place at the flower-covered arch, watching as Mia came down the aisle first, beaming in her role as bridesmaid, flower girl, and official sister of the bride, a title she had insisted upon. Then the music changed, and everyone rose as Lily appeared. She wore a simple dress, nothing like the elaborate gown that had been planned for their first attempt at marriage. Her hair was styled simply, her makeup minimal. As she walked toward him, Arthur saw in her face all the versions of this woman he had come to know. The polished Lila Hayes who had first caught his eye, the desperate Lily Morgan who had made terrible choices for what she believed was survival, and this new person who had emerged from the crucible of truth and forgiveness. When she reached him, he took her hands in his, noting how steady they were compared to his own slightly trembling ones. "Ready?" he whispered. "More than I've ever been for anything," she replied. As the judge began the ceremony, Arthur looked out at their assembled guests, close friends who had stood by them through the scandal, new friends they had made during the rebuilding process, and in the front row Sarah Williams, whose intervention had set this entire transformation in motion. "Today we gather to witness the union of Arthur Reynolds and Lily Morgan," the judge began, and Arthur felt a surge of pride at hearing her use her real name, owned now without shame or pretense. When it came time for their vows, Lily spoke first, her voice clear and strong. "Arthur, I came to you as one person and stand before you today as another. The woman you first met was a fiction. a character I created because I didn't believe my true self was worthy of love or happiness. You had every reason to turn away when you discovered the truth, but instead, you showed me that real love sees the broken places and loves anyway. She squeezed his hands. I promise to be honest with you always, to face our challenges together rather than running from them, and to love you as my true self, flaws, complicated history and all, for the rest of our days. Arthur cleared his throat, emotion making his voice rough. Lily, when we first met, I thought I knew exactly what I wanted, a simple, uncomplicated partnership with someone who seemed perfect. What I've found instead is so much more valuable, a complex, challenging, beautiful relationship with a real woman who has shown me that redemption is possible, that broken trust can be rebuilt, and that the most authentic love often comes after the hardest truths. He smiled at her through tears that matched her own. I promise to love you not despite your past, but including it, to build a future with you and Mia that honors the difficult road that brought us here, and to remember always that second chances are precious gifts not to be wasted. As the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Mia let out a cheer that made everyone laugh. Arthur kissed his bride, then knelt to include Mia in their embrace. The three of them stood together for a moment, an unexpected family forged through pain, honesty, and the courage to begin again. Later, as the reception wound down and twilight settled over the gardens, Arthur found Lily standing alone by the lake looking out at the water. He came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Any regrets?" he asked softly. She leaned back against him, secure in his embrace. "Only that it took so long to understand that the truth, however painful, is always less destructive than the most beautiful lie." Arthur turned her in his arms, studying the face he had come to love in all its authentic complexity. "Some might say I was a fool to trust you again." Lily touched his face gently. "Were you?" "No," he said with certainty, "because this time I'm not in love with an illusion. I'm in love with you, the real you, with all your scars and struggles and strength." As they walked back toward the celebration, Mia came running to meet them, taking one hand of each to swing between them. Looking at his unlikely family, the wife who had once deceived him, the child who had exposed that deception, and the new bond that had formed from those broken pieces, Arthur felt a contentment deeper than anything he had known before. Some stories don't end with perfect resolutions or easy answers. Some trust, once broken, can never be fully restored. But sometimes, if we're brave enough to face painful truths and determined enough to forge new paths, we find that what rises from the ashes of our mistakes is stronger, more authentic, and more precious than what came before. For Lily, Arthur, and Mia, the road ahead would not be without challenges. There would still be moments when old doubts surfaced, when trust was tested, when the past threatened to overshadow the present, but they would face those moments together, with honesty as their foundation and forgiveness as their strength. And, in the end, perhaps that's all any family can really ask for. Not perfection, but the courage to love each other through imperfection, to see each other clearly and choose to stay anyway, to build something true from the ruins of what was false. As the stars appeared above them and the sounds of celebration continued in the distance, the three of them stood together on the shores of the lake, where their unlikely journey had truly begun. Not a perfect family, but a real one. And for tonight at least, that was more than enough. Thank you all so much for joining me for this emotional journey of deception, redemption, and second chances. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more heartfelt family dramas. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Would you have forgiven Lily? What would you have done in Arthur's position? I love hearing from all of you. Until next time, remember that sometimes the most beautiful new beginnings come after our most painful endings.